Hello and welcome to the Music Survival Guide, the independent musician's guide on how to survive in the music industry. My name's Phil, a mixing and mastering engineer. Hope you're all doing wonderfully well out there in podcast land. As we talk, it's starting to get warmer. It's starting to get kind of springier, if that's a word. That's sort of a word, isn't it? And it's, it's nice. I mean, I prefer the winter, but let's not worry about that. This week, I wanted to talk about a really interesting topic, which is about musical mistakes and how do you handle them? How do you approach them? How do you overcome them? And I think I've worked out there's kind of two types, what I'd say. There's like the really kind of minor thing, and then the bigger kind of broader, deeper things that you have to handle. So I'm going to talk about the minor ones first, and then we'll come on to the bigger ones. We'll get more serious as we go on. Promise it won't be an overly serious thing, but it'll be something to work through. So the kind of less important, I'm going to say, is like in a gig setting. What do you do if you make a mistake at a gig? If you do a note wrong, if you kind of mess up a solo, whatever it may be, how do you deal with that? How do you handle it? Well, I think firstly, the most important thing that you can do in that scenario is do not have other band members turn around and look at you, or you have them turn around and look at another band member who made a mistake. You probably all heard it, but don't focus on it. Like, that's not going to help. That's going to make that person feel that much more stressed. And it won't help them do a good performance carrying on. And that's not going to help any of you. Do not do that. Do not do that. Once again, do not do that. If you're the person who made the mistake, the first thing you can do, if you have a good moment in the song to do this, take a breath, take a moment to just kind of breathe in, kind of center yourself and go, you got this, this song, you can do well. That will help you if you can do that. There's other strategies that you can do. You can either ignore it or you can make a joke of it. You can obviously just ignore it and move on. If you've seen bands perform, especially bands where you know their music really well, you may have noticed a mistake once or twice, but they move on and you move on. And before you know it, you've carried on. You're enjoying the song. It doesn't really matter. What really matters at a gig is the energy, and the liveness of it, the performance of it. And sometimes, in performances, mistakes happen. So that's just part of it. It's natural. You may not like it, but that's just the way it is. So you could approach it that way. You could just kind of move on. Everyone's going to enjoy the song, crack on and hear the next little bit of the song, that kind of thing. The other thing you can do, this is another kind of way of doing it, and this is probably my approach, is you make a joke of it. You kind of make a little face, do something silly, I don't know, whatever it may be, and then you carry on. If it's something more dramatic, like you fall over, you're probably going to struggle to ignore it, but you could just, do something funny about it, make a joke to another band member, something like that. And that can really help get people on side. If the audience, the crowd, notice you kind of making a little face or doing something like that after you've made a mistake, they'll find it funny and they'll find it entertaining. And that may not be what you want, but that's the best outcome that you can hope for in that moment. The best thing that you can do moving forward after that is own your mistake. If a band member comes up to you and says, I'm sorry about that solo, sorry about that particular bit where it went wrong, you go, yeah, I know. And the best thing that you can do is take that away and rehearse some more. Practice. If you've got a way of playing on your own, do it. You just got to know these songs inside out. You know how it is. You've got to commit them to memory. Just know how they go, know the flow, and make sure that you don't make that same mistake again necessarily, and that you can move past it in future shows and things like that. That's going to help you no end. The second kind of part of this is the kind of broader, deeper part of this, which is stuff like, what if a release doesn't go to plan? What if a gig doesn't sell well? And you go and there's nobody there. That's quite a common occurrence, or there's very few people there. Or what if, say, your distributor messes up and the release is delayed and you've kind of got all the kind of background stuff ready to go, and you just kind of have this huge pause on what you want to do, and you told people the song's coming out? That's really stressful. The first thing you can do in that situation, obviously this is a bigger thing than just messing up in a gig, but the first thing you can do in that situation is learn from your mistakes. What have you done wrong to cause that to happen? Now, it may be very little, that's just the truth of it, but it might not be true. So if a release doesn't go to plan, did you market it? Did you make sure that you told people about it coming, and you gave them, say, a couple of weeks notice before the single's coming out? Here it is, doing some teasers, really exciting, pre-save our song, that kind of thing, and getting kind of, I guess, the hype train built up is the way I can put it. Did you make sure that You've done stuff like try to get it playlisted? Did you try to put some money behind it and a moneyed marketing campaign? That kind of thing. If you didn't do those things, or if you forgot to do them, whatever it is, why? What can you do next time? That's the real key. What can you do better next time? So, if a gig didn't go well, it didn't sell well, did you promote it much at all? Did you promote it enough? That's a difficult question. I know that it can be very difficult to get going with some gigs. Did you just gig on the wrong night of the week in the city? That's a very, very common thing to happen. Certain nights in London are more dead than others. And it's really annoying, but you've got to just know what days those are. And you've got to know what days those are in each venue as well. That kind of thing is very hard to predict. So that's stuff that you can take away, and the next time you don't necessarily do again. You can do it differently. Then you've got the bigger one, which is your distributor messes up and the release is delayed. That's out of your control. That really is out of your control. But what can you do to mitigate the situation? What can you do to mitigate it now? How can you fix that now? So you've got to think about, all the stuff that you maybe got around it and after it. Maybe you've scheduled loads of content to go live in the days and weeks after the song's released to kind of promote it and keep talking about it. You're going to have to pull that back, obviously. And you're going to have to make sure that's pulled back. If it's just delayed by a few hours, that might not be the end of the world. But if it's delayed by a few days, that's really going to affect how you market it. So you've got to be very careful about that. And you've got to make sure you kind of pull all that back. That is one that is more out of your control. I guess that's why I included it. So you've got to learn from your mistakes, but sometimes the mistakes are not your own, and that's really frustrating, but it's just the truth. When you've done that, the next thing you need to do this, is do not beat yourself up. Because if you beat yourself up about it, if you're going, I'm rubbish, I'm terrible at this, I can't do this, that's not going to help anyone. You may have fumbled a release, you may have not had a great gig, but there'll be another one. There'll be another opportunity, and you just need to make sure that next time you can do it better. Whatever that looks like for you, you can do it better. Don't beat yourself up about it. Talk to other bands that you know, because they will all have experienced very similar things to you. And it may just be that you don't know that until you talk to them. So that's a good way around it. Talk to other people in kind of your field of experience about this kind of stuff. And again, as I say, you need to think about what could you do better next time? How could you, if you're approaching the situation again, how could you have helped? How could you have stopped this happening? That's a very good practical thing to think about. I think then you've got to think about, of course, something I've mentioned already, but you've got to think about what can you do now to sort it out. So obviously with the distributor, you need to contact them immediately. You need to make sure that you can get that resolved as soon as possible. If there's a technical error that you've made, fix it as soon as possible, that kind of thing. But if you're in a gig situation, there's not many people there, that's a bit frustrating. There's maybe not a lot you can do about it. But what can you do now to sort it out? Very practical question to ask. How can you fix this right now? If you're coming towards a gig, you're say hours away and it's really undersubscribed, is there something that you could do in your social media to go, really, really come along, it's going to be a great show? That kind of thing. That might just be the little key you need to get a few more people there and turn a terrible gig into a pretty good gig. And that could be what you need to sort it out. And the final question for you, the final thing you need to think about, this is really, really important, not a lot of people think about this, is what are you annoyed about that isn't in your control? Stuff that's not in your kind of zone of control, for example, a distributor not releasing when you've worked out they're going to release, that kind of thing. It's not in your control. And so the worst thing that you can do is get frustrated at yourself and angry at yourself about it, because that's not going to work. You need to just keep cool and work out what is in your sphere of control. What can you do better? What can you fix now? What can you do better next time? That is going to be the absolute best thing that you can do, frankly, for your peace of mind, for your, I guess, actually mental health moving forward. And it'll help you work out practically how can you fix this problem. So that's kind of my kind of little practical thought walkthrough. That's another thing. It is now a thought walkthrough of how do you handle musical mistakes. And I just thought it'd be really useful, really interesting to talk about and think through. If you are experiencing any of these difficulties right now, in any way, shape or form, drop me a message on all my social medias. They're kind of down in the description box below. Don't know why I'm pointing downwards now. You can't see me. And I'd love to have a conversation with you about working through those questions. How can you fix these problems? How can you move forward so that next time you don't make these mistakes again, where you have that level of control? So thank you for listening to another episode of the Music Survival Guide. If you liked it, please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen. It really, really does all help the algorithm. Please do share it with any friends and bandmates if you thought it was helpful. If you're thinking through these questions right now, could be a really interesting podcast to send over to them. Finally, if you're thinking about recording or mixing and you want to talk about it, feel free to reach out to me via the links in the podcast description below, and I will see you next time.